Member for Couva North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to participate in this debate on this motion today, which seeks an extension of the exemption from import duties pursuant to Part A of the list of conditional duty exemptions in the third schedule of the Customs Act. Before I go directly into my work that I would like to present today, Madam Speaker, I want to take a moment to respond to my colleague who clearly came here totally unprepared for this debate. And listening to him go all over in his contribution, I want to humbly advise him that the next time he attempts to join a debate, he should consider reading the motion before he speaks. Because nowhere in his presentation, Madam Speaker, did he respond to the contribution from the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. The Leader of the Opposition spoke of matters relating to the hotel industry. She spoke to challenges facing the agricultural sector. She spoke about the lack of data that has been presented by the Minister in putting forward the motion. And our colleague from Laventille comes here in this chamber and goes all over, but not addressing the issues that this motion is about. He even makes claim that the PNM renegotiated gas deals. But I also want to remind him that the PNM also renegotiated the Malcolm Jones deal with the WGTL, billions of dollars, the withdrawal of legal matters for recovering money. They renegotiated.
Order. 48.1, relevance.
Member for St. Augustine, if you would allow me to do my work, I would allow you to do yours when you're recognized. Member for Couva North, while I understand that you may be responding, I'm also going to renew it because the gas mentioned was in response to something that was said with regard to how the local content and how things are being administered. So I'm not going to let you widen this debate about all other things. Okay? So quickly come to your point and move on back to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your guidance, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister, the member spoke about youth and youth development, and I want to congratulate the oldest member, the oldest Minister of Youth on their benches. He managed to touch on 3 social media personality that was created, that was utilized for the elections. And I really want to know what was the role and function of these social media personalities. Was it real personalities or was it unreal social media personalities? But we will deal with that.
48.1, point of order, relevance.
So let's get on with the debate, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm guided accordingly. On the last occasion, Madam Speaker, when a similar motion was brought to this Parliament almost 3 years ago by the Honourable Minister, the Honourable Minister informed this House that this motion allows for the extension of concessions to enable TNT incorporated companies in the private sector to acquire the necessary foreign inputs at world market prices without being subject to custom duties on entry. The Honourable Minister also stated that this provision would ensure that companies were not placed at a disadvantage in terms of their international competitiveness. However, Madam Speaker, almost 1 year after this country witnessed the closure of Petrotrin and the virtual shutting down of the oil and gas sector, perhaps one of the biggest economic fallout from this was a compromise in both the availability of and the access of a foreign exchange by members of the private sector, Madam Speaker. While the Minister may not have intended for this to be so, this is the unfortunate position that the ordinary man has faced for the past 2 years due to the failed governance of this PNM administration. And by extension, Madam Speaker, our local export businesses have become sorely disadvantaged in terms of their international competitiveness due to the lack of this foreign exchange. Coming from this disadvantaged position that our farmers have found themselves in through no fault of their own, even in their access to fund projects, agricultural projects that may be capital intensive in nature, the access to US foreign exchange or the lack thereof plays a critical role in the success of these agricultural projects, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you would permit me, I want to use my limited time to focus on approved agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fisheries as they relate to this motion. If this government was really serious about agriculture and farming in Trinidad and Tobago, as they claim to be, they would allow farmers to have priority access to foreign exchange in order to make the full use of the exemptions on the approved agricultural machine, equipment, implements, and tools and medicine, minerals and supplement, and for livestock, etc. But farmers, like all other citizens out there, continue to find it extremely difficult to access this US. Madam Speaker, 3 years ago, on piloting a similar motion, the Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry highlighted the value of agriculture production in 2016 and its contribution to GDP. The Minister indicated, and I quote, "Agriculture has been identified as one of the sectors earmarked with the government's diversification strategy. The success of this sector contributes to increased food security, agricultural export, employment and conservation of foreign exchange, while also providing an incentive for people to live more healthy and productive lifestyle." End quote. However, the government must face the many questions that arise regarding the effectiveness of their focus on diversification in terms of the results achieved, for instance, by way of attracting and encouraging new participants, and how these exemptions have played a part in the management of the sector. One of the questions that has arisen is how these exemptions performed in the past 24 months in terms of additional benefits to livestock farmers, poultry farmers, food crop farmers, fishermen, etc., taking into account that on the 15th of December 2017, the Honourable Minister stated that for the period January 1, 2016 to July 1, 2017, under agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fisheries, 8 farmers producing vegetables and rearing animals such as sheep, goats, and cattle benefited from custom duties exemption under this facility. And the leader spoke and questioned who these 8 farmers are, and we would really like to hear, are these farmers planting sweet potato? Who these farmers are? Are they rearing goat or peacock? Who these farmers really are, Madam Speaker? We would really like to hear from the Honourable Minister. What happened to the remaining thousands of farmers in this country, farmers who continue to face challenges since this government has entered office in 2015, and the initial extension to these exemptions, challenges such as land use, land tenure, access road, irrigation, drainage, flooding, predial larceny, just to name a few, Madam Speaker. These challenges continue up to today's date. What we can clearly see are gaps in the system, Madam Speaker. This motion refers to Part A of the Conditions Duty Exemption in the third schedule of the Custom Act. Can the Honourable Minister advise us as to the timeline for processing these exemptions, taking into account that farmers who have applied for subsidies, reimbursement, exemptions, and who have filed claim for loss of produce due to flooding have been waiting for over 2 years for their application to be approved? Madam Speaker, I want to swiftly turn to the review of the economy. Page 165, a book presented here, 2020, presented for the budget. And the year 2017 show a value of 1.8 billion TT dollars for gross domestic produce of Trinidad and Tobago at market prices for agriculture, forestry, and fishing. Madam Speaker, this review of the economy for the period for the year 2019, GDP fell to $1,608 million, which is a decline, Madam Speaker, of $273 million, highlighting the failure of this PNM government once more. In December 2017, Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister indicated that Cabinet had approved the development of a new agro-processing and light industrial park in Moruga to support the agro-processing industry. The Minister explained, and I quote, "This park will provide the foundation upon which businesses will be able to grow and prosper, create employment, and attract investment." Madam Speaker, after spending some $80 million to complete this facility in Moruga on the eve of the 2020 general election, what has become of this initiative, Madam Speaker? How many persons are currently employed there? What level of investment has it attracted to date, Madam Speaker? You could ask my colleague, the MP for Moruga Tableland. She visited this facility only a few days ago, and there was absolutely no activity going on there, Madam Speaker, none whatsoever. So the question that we have to ask, was this $80 million spent for a photo opportunity for the PNM candidate and his partner who was severely defeated in a recent election? What did we spend this $80 million for, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister in her 2017 presentation continued to explain, and I quote once more, "All these initiatives are geared towards increasing revenue and decreasing our reliance on food import." Madam Speaker, let us review our food import bill for the period. As I now turn to the Central Statistic Office, total import of food and live animal for the period 2017. This was a total of $5,606 million TT dollars. And for the year 2019, the total food import bill was $5,673 million TT dollars, an increase, Madam Speaker, of $67 million. Again, another failure of this PNM government. I now turn to the issue facing our livestock farmers, Madam Speaker. You see, Madam Speaker, while perusing the list of conditional duties, exemptions for approved agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fisheries, I was looking to see if forage was going to be included. Because forage is something that is very important to our livestock farmer. But it wasn't, Madam Speaker, and I would therefore like to suggest that it should. You see, Madam Speaker, the forage bank at the Mojalu farms has become overgrown with weed, bushes, shrubs, and has not been maintained for the past couple of years. Another failure of this PNM administration. And Madam Speaker, the dry season will soon be upon us, and livestock farmers will face significant challenge to provide forage for their animals. The PNM government has once again failed to maintain the Mojalu farms and provide the necessary resources for the growth and the development of our livestock industry, Madam Speaker. Where is the Livestock Board? Madam Speaker, I would like to ask the Honourable Minister, how has this motion really benefited the fishing industry? The intent of this motion is to attract new entrants into the industry and enhance their competitiveness. But, Madam Speaker, when we look at the challenges facing the fishing industry, this provision does not alleviate the hardship or the fears that our fisher folk faces. And the fishing industry, we all know, is one that is very close to the heart of Couva North, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just as recent as Sunday the 6th of December, just a few days ago, around 7 p.m., persons working on a vessel owned by Mr. R. Khan were approached by 6 men in a pirogue who appeared to be pirates out at sea. Just Sunday gone, this was reported yesterday to our Coast Guards. The men on Mr. Khan's vessel were able to narrowly escape with their lives, Madam Speaker, by turning off their lights and speeding off into the darkness of the sea. Madam Speaker, this incident has served as a reminder once more to our fisher folks of the tragic incident that took place just a few years ago, where 5 of our own Couva North young men were slaughtered out at sea, with 2 still missing up to today's date. And this motion, Madam Speaker, does not help in any way to alleviate the fears of the fishing industry. Madam Speaker, the list of exemption to which this motion refers, I draw your attention to item 10, boats and boat equipment and fuel for fishing. Item 10 on the schedule. The initial incarnation of this exempt item was because previous administration would have recognized the need to bolster the competitiveness of our fishermen. But, Madam Speaker, in terminating the supply of regular gas, which our fishermen used to fuel their vessels, they are now faced with an exorbitant fuel cost that eliminated any possibility of being competitive against the larger vessels who fish in international waters and sell the catch here in Trinidad at considerably lower prices. The bureaucracy involved in the existing fuel subsidy is extremely tiresome, and many fishermen do not even use this facility anymore. Madam Speaker, I would like to propose that this government perhaps look at a more considerate fuel subsidy program for the fishing industry, and even seek to expand the schedule to include items such as GPS and other security devices for our fisher folks. Madam Speaker, in closing, I have no objection in supporting the principle behind this motion for the sake of the local agriculture, livestock, forestry, and fishing industry, Madam Speaker. However, based on the reasoning put forward by the Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry on the last occasion, and by what was said in today's debate, where she hurriedly presented on agriculture for 2 minutes, from 2:46 p.m. to 2:48 p.m., she spent 2 minutes, Madam Speaker, while they claim to be putting agriculture at the center of their diversification trust. Only 2 minutes was allocated to the diversification and to the agriculture industry in her presentation. I would like to ask that the government's understanding and reasoning behind this extension take into considerations the recommendations that I have made, because it seems as though that this government understanding and reasoning behind this exemption seems a far cry from the reality of what ought to be. This motion has failed to enhance agriculture. It has failed to improve the contributions of agriculture to GDP. It has failed at reducing our food import bill by conserving foreign exchange. Madam Speaker, the government has lost their way in placing agriculture at the center of their diversification trust. And in general, Madam Speaker, the records will reflect that this government has lost their way in totality as they has failed all of us. They have failed all of us
Member
here
for Couva
in
North.
TNT. I thank
Time is up.